the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always...
Friends, in today's lecture, we have to take a pat on our back. It marks the end of the EC2. EC2, as I've always been telling, it's a backbone. So after this lecture, just like we did for S3, we'll do a quick recap on EC2, and then we'll be proceeding into EBS, Elastic Block Storage. So in the final part of the lecture, we'll be seeing what a VMware is and what an AWS Outpost is. Okay, so both the things are quite important. So hang in with me. Okay. So number one, why do we use a VMware? So what is a VMware? A VMware is basically, it is used by organizations around the world for private cloud deployments. Some organizations actually they actually opt for a hybrid cloud strategy that would like to leverage the AWS services. So a VM is basically a virtual machine. Okay, so that is a VM. So you actually log in or you log into the AWS data center, or in some cases where there's a hybrid between on-premise and AWS. So you use a VM in order to connect. Okay, so this is a VMware. Okay, so what are all the use cases for a VMware? Hybrid cloud, like where you actually connect your on-premise cloud to the AWS public cloud. Cloud migration, where you migrate your existing cloud environment to AWS using the VMware tools. Disaster recovery. VMware has always been very famous for its disaster recovery technology. So using the hybrid cloud, which is an on-premise and AWS, you can have an inexpensive disaster recovery environment on the AWS. So this is quite easy as well. Leverage the AWS. The AWS is a big, it's a big ocean. I mean, it's a mighty ocean these days. So, use over 200 AWS services to update your applications and create new ones. So you can actually see the power of the VMware these days. Now, how it is actually deploy the VMware? It runs on a dedicated hardware hosted in AWS using a single AWS account. It is, let's not worry about the host socket, but it is quite big. Okay, so let's not worry about it. Let's not get into the nitty-gritty details. I don't think it is even necessary in the exam. So let's not worry about it. So each host is capable of running multiple VMwares, in hundreds. So this is what you need to know. So a cluster can start with 2 hosts and up to 16 hosts per cluster. Okay, so 2 hosts or 16 hosts per cluster. So this is a VMware. So how can you actually deploy? A VMware is a perfect solution for extending your private VMware cloud into the AWS. This is like the hybrid, okay, on-prem and the AWS, and the intermediate thing which actually connects you between the on-prem and the AWS is your VMware. All right. Now, having said that, let's actually move on to the Outpost. What is an Outpost? So Outpost actually brings the AWS data center directly to your on-premise. Now just we saw the VMware. Let's actually continue with the same train of thoughts in the same family hierarchy. So the Outpost allows you to have a large variety of AWS services in your data center. You can have Outposts in sizes such as 1U and 2U service and all up to 42U service. Okay, so it's all the rack and multi-rack and stuff of that nature. So more about the AWS, because I didn't understand it completely. In AWS Outpost, it is a fully managed service that extends AWS infrastructure services to your customer premises. Okay, so basically the AWS has got a lot of things, right? So the Outpost is a fully managed service. It extends your AWS infrastructure to your customer premise. It provides you the local access. Okay, it enables the customers to build and run applications on the premise using the same programming interface as an AWS region. All right, an Outpost is a pool of AWS compute and storage capacity deployed at the customer site. Okay, so it is deployed at the customer site. AWS operates, monitors, and manages this capacity as a part of AWS region. Okay, all these, the subnets we have actually seen, but the VPCs we have not, the EBS we have not, the ECS clusters we actually read about it, the RDS instance will be coming about it. So the instances in Outpost subnets communicate with other instances in AWS region using the private IP address. The public and private IP address, we also seen that in the EC2. We have taken the public, it was actually displaying our web page. The private did not, and I've also shown that as an example. Okay, the VPC is also a very important topic which we'll be covering after EBS or in that range, so hang in there. Okay, so this is what the AWS Outpost is. Okay, it's still not clear. There are some key concepts in the AWS Outpost. One is the Outpost site, where you actually install your Outpost. Okay, you have an Outpost configuration, you have an Outpost capacity, you have an Outpost equipment, you have an Outpost rack, the servers, the local gateway, the local network interface. So these things are the key concepts in the Outpost. This is not an exam question, okay, but it does not hurt to know something more, right? So you can actually talk intelligently sometime, right? I'll give you 10 seconds, okay, and then before I go on to the next slide, okay, so just go over it. I know it is quite a lot, but you can also pause the video, or you can actually see, but I'll give you 10 seconds. Alright, so let's move on to the next slide. So what are all the benefits of the Outpost? We have a hybrid cloud. This is exactly what we saw in the VMware. Okay, create a hybrid cloud where you can leverage AWS services inside your own data center. It's a fully managed infrastructure. AWS can manage the infrastructure for you. You do not need a dedicated team to look after your Outpost infrastructure. How easy it is. Okay, so an infrastructure, the infrastructure, how many people are there, and the cost and the maintenance and paying the money and stuff of that nature, and the headache. AWS takes care of everything. Okay, it can manage the entire infrastructure. And the consistency. Bring the AWS Management Console, APIs and SDK into your data center, allowing uniform consistency in your hybrid environment. And hybrid is always an on-premise to the cloud. All right. So the Outpost, what are all the family in the Outpost? In the Outpost, there is rack and server. So you have a hardware, you have a services, you have a result. The same AWS infrastructure services and API, in your own data center. You can, sometimes you can use for small space requirements such as a retail store, branch office, healthcare provider locations or factory floors. So, these are all like some of the families of the Outpost. Okay, you can just go over it. It is, just for understanding. Now, you actually order the Outpost. You log into your AWS Management Console and you actually order your Outpost configuration. And AWS staff will come on site to install and deploy the hardware, including the power, networking and connectivity. Okay, and you can use the AWS Management Console, which we actually shown in the lecture. You can launch your instances on your Outpost on site, and you can actually start building your on-site AWS environment. So this is the way you would do your Outpost. You will actually place an order, someone from the AWS will actually come and really do the installation, and just as like imagine like a remote control car. With the remote control as a management console, you can actually control and you can actually build your on-site AWS environment. Okay, so this is how we actually go. Okay, so extending your AWS to your data center, extending AWS to your data center, not the other way around, not the data center connecting to the AWS using a VMware, extending the data center AWS to your data center, that is the Outpost. Okay, AWS Outpost rack, we saw that rack is for large deployments, server is for smaller deployments. Alright, I trust you would have actually understood about the VMware and the Outpost. If you have any questions, kindly contact me. I'll actually try to help you to the best of my abilities. This marks the end of EC2, and next will be a quick recap of EC2. And I want to thank you for giving me your time. So till we see next time, you take care. Cheers. Thank you.